know, never ever chase something. And motherfucker that ain't loving you, you have everything. Just look at it. Word.
Myths about the government debt. Myth number 1, the government owes $20 trillion. How much is $20 trillion? Suppose you go to Germany, and in Germany you go to every town, and in every town you visit every store, and in every store you look at every shelf and grab everything that is for sale. The amount of money you spend will not be $20 trillion. If you go to Germany and then to France, and you go to every town, and within every town you go to every store, and every store you look at every shelf and you buy everything, you still will not have spent $20 trillion. You can go to England, and while you're there, you can go to the North countries and buy everything that's for sale, and you still will not have spent $20 trillion. In fact, to spend $20 trillion, you have to go to every country in Europe, visit every town, and every town go to every store, in every store, look on every shelf, and buy everything. And then you will have spent about $20 trillion. But the myth is that this is how much money the government owes. It turns out that there's more, called unfunded obligations. Unfunded obligations is money the federal government has promised, but which it does not and will not have the money to pay. Largely, this consists of promises of retirement and medical benefits. If you take the present value of all the future promises of retirement and medical benefits the government has made, and subtract from that the amount of money that's in the government's Social Security and Medicare trust funds, and then subtract from that the amount of money the federal government anticipates collecting under the current law from future Social Security and Medicare taxes, you will still have an amount of money left over that the government does not have. And that's the unfunded obligations, an amount of money the government has promised which it does not and will not have the money to pay. Estimates of unfunded obligations vary from the astronomical to the unbelievable. On the low end, people have estimated unfunded obligations to be about $80 trillion. On the high end, $200 trillion. So this means that the federal government's total financial obligations range somewhere from $100 to $220 trillion. Let's say, roughly speaking, the federal government owes about $150 trillion. Myth number 2, the government owes $150 trillion. Well, it turns out there's more to it. There are federal agencies that don't appear on the federal government's budget. There are government-sponsored enterprises like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that don't appear on the government's financial statements, and they owe another $8 trillion. There's then state and local governments that collectively owe about $3 trillion and have another $5 trillion in their own unfunded obligations. So when we put it all together, the total U.S. governmental financial obligations total about $165 trillion. Myth number 3. Government borrowed from the Social Security Trust Fund isn't really debt because we owe it to ourselves. Well, it turns out there is no ourselves here. The trust fund belongs to current and future retirees. So when people retire and the government does not have the money that it has promised them, one of two things must happen. Either the government must increase taxes on future workers to pay for the Social Security and Medicare obligations it has promised, or the government has to cut the promised Social Security and Medicare benefits that it had promised to retirees. Either way, someone must pay. Myth number 4, the government can't go bankrupt. This is technically true because the government promised to pay back a certain number of dollar bills. And so as the government starts to run out of money, it can simply print more, thereby satisfying its obligation. But while that's technically true, it's effectively false, because when the government prints money, it erodes the purchasing power of dollars, thereby creating inflation. For example, suppose you have a bunch of people, and these people buy things. They buy things from Walmart, from McDonald's, and Ford, and in buying these things, they give these businesses money. In return, they receive goods and services from these businesses. The ratio of the dollars they pay to the goods and services they receive, we call prices. So we have the average price of a hamburger, the average price of a pair of shoes, the average price of a car. Now, if the government were to print enough money to double the money supply, we would have twice as many dollar bills floating around, but the same amount of goods and services. All that would happen is the prices of these goods and services themselves would double. So with twice as many dollar bills, a hamburger now goes from a price of $4 to a price of $8. The car goes from $30,000 to a price of $60,000. And one of the prices that will double is people's wages. Interestingly, you're left with the following. Under scenario 1, without the government printing money, let's suppose you earn $50,000 a year, and the price of a hamburger, shoes, and a car, things you would buy, are $4,000, $30,000, and $30,000. And then along comes the government and prints lots of money, and in printing the money, it doubles all the prices, including your income. So now, in scenario 2, you're earning twice as much as you were before, $100,000, but the prices of the things you buy have all doubled as well. And so if I ask you, are you better off in scenario 1 or scenario 2, the answer is you're the same in both. It doesn't matter to you whether you're earning $50,000 and a car costs $30,000, or whether you're earning $100,000 and a car costs $60,000. It's the same car. Now, there is a difference in the two scenarios, and the difference shows up when you look at your savings. Let's suppose in scenario 1, you had $10,000 in savings, you're earning $50,000, and a hamburger costs $4,000. Along comes the government, it prints money, and in printing money, all the prices double. That means that the hamburger now costs twice as much, the shoes cost twice as much, you're earning twice as much, but your savings is the same. It's the same $10,000 sitting in savings. And what has happened? When the government comes along and prints money, in effect what it's doing is draining away the purchasing power of your savings. So economists say it this way: inflation is a tax on savings. When the government prints money and thereby creates inflation, we get the same exact effect as if the government had imposed a tax on people's savings. So the fact is that the government ultimately pays for bankruptcy by taxing the purchasing power of people's savings. Myth number 5. The government can solve its financial problems by raising taxes. Well, it turns out the government can't raise taxes at all. It can only raise tax rates. Taxes are what happens when the tax rate the government imposes interacts with people's behavior. This is perhaps the most interesting picture in all of economics. And it's interesting precisely because it's so boring. What you're seeing here is federal tax receipts. This is all tax revenue from all sources combined. Payroll taxes, income taxes, estate taxes, tariffs, everything. Federal taxes, all sources combined, as a fraction of GDP. And what you see is from 1950 up to the present, this has remained relatively stable at about 17%. That is, over time, if you think of the economy as a pie, the government has collected a constant 17% slice of this economic pie. Now, let's superimpose on top of this, for example, the top marginal income tax rate. So back in the 1950s, the top marginal income tax rate was north of 90%. It dropped in the 1960s, reached an all-time low during the Reagan years, goes back up during Bush the First, comes back down, goes back up again. This is the top marginal income tax rate. So when you talk about taxing the rich, this is the rate that applies to the rich. But notice what happens here. In years in which we tax the rich at a very high rate, the government collected 17% of the economy as tax revenue. And in years in which we lowered the tax rate on the rich, the government still collected 17% of the economy as tax revenue. And the same is true of, for example, the capital gains rate. When capital gains taxes were particularly high, the government collected 17% of the economy as tax revenue. When capital gains taxes were particularly low, the government collected 17% of the economy as tax revenue. The same is true of the average effective corporate tax rate. When corporations paid higher fractions of their profits to the federal government collected 17% of the economy as tax revenue. When tax rates on corporations were lower, the government still collected the same 17% of the economy as tax revenue. It didn't matter whether we taxed the rich or capital gains or corporations. It didn't matter whether we taxed them a high amount or we taxed them a low amount. Regardless of what the government has done, historically, it has consistently collected the same 17% of the economy as tax revenue. Now, you might say, all right, but we're looking at tax revenue as a fraction of GDP. Tell me what's happening to tax revenue straight up. So let's look at what happens to tax revenue as tax rates change. What you see here is the top marginal income tax rate. This is data from 1940 to 2015. So across the bottom, as we move to the right, we're taxing the rich at a higher rate. As we move to the left, we're taxing the rich at a lower rate. Up and down, we're measuring tax revenue per person 1 year later. So this is total federal tax revenue on a per capita basis 1 year after the tax rate goes into effect. And this is all adjusted for inflation. The story we hear when we hear things like, well, we need more tax revenue, so we need to tax the rich more. Implicit in that statement is, as you increase the tax rate on the rich, we will collect more tax revenue. But if we actually look at the data, what we see is a different picture. The actual data looks like this. On average, as we have increased the tax rate on the rich, 1 year later, the federal government has actually collected, on average, less tax revenue. There are exceptions to this, but there's also a very clear trend that the tax revenue moves in the opposite direction that we think it should. And this is not just true of the top marginal income tax rate. We also see it if we look at the capital gains tax rate. Now, the relationship here is not as tight, but it's disturbingly in the same direction. On average, as the government has increased the capital gains tax rate, 1 year later, it has collected less tax revenue than it did before. We see the same phenomenon with the corporate profits tax. We see the same thing with the estate tax. In fact, of all the federal taxes, I'm only aware of two, which historically, as the government has increased these tax rates, its tax revenue has actually gone up. And those two taxes are Social Security and Medicare. The disturbing part of this is these are the taxes that fall most heavily on the poor and the middle class. Myth number 6. The rich aren't paying their fair share. What constitutes a fair share? What you see here is average market income of various income groups in the United States as of 2013. So we have the poorest 20% of Americans at the top. Their market income, that is income they earn from participating in market activities as opposed to money the government gives them. Their market income is about $15,800 on average. Here's the middle income Americans. Their average income is about $53,000, and the top 1% just over $1.5 million. So let's ask, what is a fair tax rate for these people to pay? And as we talk about tax rates, let's talk about effective tax rates. And what I mean by that is, after you have done all of your legal and accounting gymnastics and write-offs and deductions and exemptions, when all that's finished, what fraction of your income did you end up paying to the IRS? That's the effective tax rate. So we can argue about what constitutes fair. A lot of people tend to answer the following way. The poor should probably pay somewhere around 2%. A lot of people think that the middle-class Americans should pay around 15%. And a lot of people think that the top 1% should pay around 30% of their income as taxes. Now, we can argue about whether these things are indeed fair, but these seem to be numbers that lots of people will tend to agree with. So let's look at what these groups actually pay. If we look at the federal taxes collected from each of these groups, we see something like the following. The average household amongst the poorest 20% of Americans pays, on average, $800 in federal taxes. The average middle income household in the United States pays about $9,000 in taxes, and the average household amongst the top 1% pays about $500,000 in federal taxes. Now, this isn't the end of the story, because we don't just pay money to the federal government. The federal government also gives money back. A lot of this comes in the form of the Earned Income Tax Credit, or Social Security benefits, or unemployment compensation. But all of these things are instances in which the government has first collected money and then turned around and given the money back. So let's account for this, and economists call this transfers. Transfers are money the government gives to people. The average household amongst the poorest 20% received an average federal transfer of about $9,600 in 2013. The average middle-income household received about $16,700. The average top 1% earned about $800. Most of that is likely coming from Social Security retirement benefits. But notice what happens now. If we calculate the effective tax rate by accounting not just for what people pay to the government, but for the money the government pays them back, what we find is something astounding. We claimed that a fair tax rate for the poorest Americans is 2% and a fair tax rate for the top 1% is 30%. If we run these numbers, what we find is the poorest 20% on average are actually paying negative 56%. That is, when all the dust settles, they're actually receiving more money back from the federal government than they paid in the first place, making their effective tax rate below zero. This is true all the way up through middle-income America. The average middle-income American is receiving back 15% more from the federal government than he paid in. The top 1% are paying about 34%. And here we have an interesting conclusion. On average, and there are exceptions, but on average, only the top 40% are net payers into the federal government.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to announce that we are offering trustee training and notary classes for all interested parties, Monday through Friday. For more details, please feel free to reach out to us at 904-490-0297. Again, that number is 904-490-0297. We can be reached from the times of 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, and you can also reach us 12 to 4 on Saturdays. If you can't reach us there on the line, please feel free to drop us an email at B as in boy, I as in Isaac, D as in David, I as in indigo, I as in indigo, L as in Larry, B as in boy, E as in Edward, Y as in yarn at gmail.com. Again, that email is BIDZIILBEY at gmail.com. And remember, if you're interested in getting your affairs in order, you need to start by getting your mind right. Peace and love.
They've interrupted our programs for a news report.
Welcome to More TV England. I'm your host, Chris Scott. Now, it is a great Masonic secret that has long been revealed that it was George Washington who chopped down the cherry tree of the Moors, erasing them from the history books and removing their nationality, fez and turbans. It was even predicted that in a few hundred years, many of them would not remember who they were or their connection to the land.
Who are the Moors? This is one of the most difficult of historical questions, and in fact, this is the most neglected chapter in Black history.
When you go back into history, the 1800s and back, Moor and African are synonymous. One of the things that our people mistake, they look at Moor as being a club or a belief system, which it is not. It's their pedigree, it's the bloodline.
Where do the Moors fit into our history? Because you know it's been this beef going on about the Moors come out of Egypt, we are not black. Where do the Moors fit into Egypt, ancient Egypt? At the time of building the Great Pyramids, was our people call themselves Moors, and where did that word come from?
Well, Moor means black.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, Moors will argue with you about that.
Moor means black. Moor is deeply steeped in the Greek tradition
You heard what he said?
and in the Roman tradition. Moor means black.
We are involved in a struggle in which we will win. And one of the struggles is to make us aware of the fantastic capacity and potential that lay in our world. The Moorish story is one of the most hopeful stories on earth. Who are these Moors? The word Moor comes from Moros, which means dark, which the Greeks used, and then the Romans made it Moraz, and then some people say it also came from Meroe, Moor came from Meroe. When Shakespeare uses it, he means black. Whether it is Othello, or whether it is the figure in Titus Andronicus.
Yo, those were the warriors, star sign Taurus. Watch me get beat like the eye of Horus. Pyramid, symbol, kick, snare, symbol. Things go up, and I don't mean jingles. Stories about man, about how the song man. Hold tight, man, like Uncle T. Coleman. Yearn for the learning, knowledge that I'm earning. I watch for the evil, stay away from the burning. Got the enemy, kicking it, now I see the music. Time to give back, no longer abuse it. I see the light. The right path to choose it. Turn out open so I no longer lose it. And I'm on the winner. No longer I'm a sinner. Let me yam with this beat like I'm eating my dinner. See I dropped up my bars and started to get thinner. But I opened my eyes and took my head off the pillar. Now I'm done with this music. Got back to the music. Got in my heart. no longer confusion. Realize my own eyes, I was under an illusion. How me trapped, got bound by the mental prostitution. But now I see it, I'm a idiot, I'm a revolutionary. Cause it's stuck, no limit, but no MP. I don't got no gimmick, doing deals with the devil, getting hot in it. And the future's scary, research prepare me, and give me a reason for why we're all every. But we don't care, got us fighting for a share. We don't realize bankers don't play fair. Got us hypnotized by the go to jail square. Horrible lighting, building higher in the air while we're kept in the pits. But I see through the tricks, spin black from the lights like a soul never dips. And now I shine brightly, I hold the mic tightly. Knowledge in my head and my heart's gonna guide me. Steer from the truth, it's highly unlikely. Voicing my views makes people wanna fight me over. My history, they've kept it a mystery. I open my eyes and I see through the trickery. Realize the enemy goes back through the monarchy. Rule with the Jews, we're all fools, what a mockery. They take the taxes while we're in this poverty. They like robbery, got us fishing on the lottery. They sit back and chill, just laugh at the comedy. We're marked by the beast on the misery. Caught in the dream, I need to open the eyes. Trapped in a cell in this world for the lies. They know they're going down to take us with them, that's the prize. They control what's good, so we don't hear the cries. Yeah, so we don't hear the cries. I won't fall for the lies. Yeah, I won't fall for the lies. Yeah, I won't.
But remember when it came a time in 1506, after we lost power in Spain, the Africans ruled Spain from 711. We were calling ourselves Moors, M-A-U-E-R-S and M-O-O-R-S. From 711 to 1485, 740 years, when we brought into Europe the university system, built the University of Salamanca, S-A-L-A-M-A-N-C-A in Spain, a copy of the University of Guinea from ancient Ghana, which was equally a copy of the University of Saint-Tropez in Tonga, which the French made up for Timbuktu. Now, if you want to read Stanley Moores, the Moors in Spain, written in 1887, or Alejandro Bacaziza, read his book in Spanish, The Moors in Spain, and said that even the black was introduced by those Africans.
They were brought into Europe by the Moors. This is why the Crusades took place. And it wasn't long before we knew they would try to get to the world. So when we presented and developed our idea, we said that the Crusades were the precursor to Columbus. We should have seen them coming.
Peace and love, family. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Hope I'm coming in loud and clear. We're going to definitely get into civics class, trustee training, to get everybody definitely what they need. So much to do, so little time, so I'm not going to take up a whole lot of it. I'm just going to jump right into it. Before we begin, we put a disclaimer out here. Each and everything you need to for broadcast for educational purposes only. We do not profess to give legal advice. Each and everything for broadcast is designed with you in mind to put you civically and economically in the right place at the right time. So, a lot of things you're going to hear these people broadcast you may have heard before, some things you may have never heard before. But remember, truth is not up for debate. We do not ask if you believe anything that we say, we just say we challenge you to research the truth. Why? Because they say, well, we will perish for the lack of knowledge, so as long as you're on my watch, we'll make sure you definitely get it in when you fit in. This is WTDTA Radio, home of Ready to Do That Radio, spelled by media and entertainment. Each and everything will be a particular broadcast for educational purposes only. So, family, let the plot thicken. Civically, do you understand that you're no longer in campus anymore? Maybe because you think that, the oppressor may owe you something. I hear a lot of people say, well, I think they owe us a living. They took this from us. They took that from us. They did this. They did that. But it's like, first of all, we got to understand we're not coming to this whole thing with clean hands, boards, we did some things. So necessarily, the universe is not returning anything back loop or void. We just have to understand our place in it. And understand that the adversary, or what you'll call the enemy, they know what time it is. They know their time is up. So if they know their time is up, the question is, do you know who you are? Do you know where you go? So hopefully this particular broadcast and civics class get an opportunity to exploit and expound upon that. I will open up the call lines for anyone that doesn't have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can hit me up at 701-802-5141, passcode 801-7884, and the pound. Call me now. Again, that number is 701-802-5141, 8017-8884, and the pound. Hit me up now if you got any questions, comments, or concerns. We're going to definitely get it in. Civics and Trustee training has begun. Remember, if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something. Keep listening, man.
Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The job buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a duck under the coat. Punks are running wild in the streets. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do. There's nothing to it. You know, the air is unfit to breathe, our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us today we have 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller. All we say is, please leave us alone in our living room. Let me have my toaster, my TV, my steel belt and radio. I won't say anything, just leave us alone. But I'm not living with you. I want you to get past.
Time is night, so I look to the sky. This world of corruption, but it's going outside. We escape the truth by just getting night. Get transfixed by the things that we buy. It's so low, but the devil get the high. You see the truth, but won't let it lie. If we let it lie, no longer we cry about God in my arm. Won't let me die. Blessed with the skill of the cool technician. I'll make you see right like an optician. Red with the blue, make that decision. Focus, leaders, head on collisions. Low for the place, it's right in your face. Hold my feet, bring life in the face. See the step, since the start of a race. Fight or conquer and then run the chase.
Come in.
He's like, I'm staying over here with the crowd.
All right, news for you all. Shadow government. What's that about?
Here we go.
Right now, I'll speak.
A hidden government, a government behind another government.
Well,
Puppeteering the visible government.
Yeah. And? And?
Okay, so there's an outward government, but then there's another government, an interior government that's controlling, like I said, puppeteering the outer government that's controlling the back. Does she understand? It's like Sesame Street, and like there's a hand controlling the puppet. You see. No. Yeah, you see. Okay, yeah, you see the puppet, and you see. All right. It's just all right. You see the puppet. It's like they get carried away.
Don't even say you was wrong.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you see,
make it elementary.
all right.
And when you stretch it like this.
Alright, okay, like you see the puppet, and then you see the puppet, but then there's a hand that's guiding that puppet, that's causing it to speak. And the puppet in and of itself doesn't have a life of its own. If you took that hand away, then
the eyebrows raising.
I mean, that's the extent of my knowledge.
All right, good.
When we look at the letter, written to from Pope,
yeah,
and Pope Paul, his letter, the America major in the United States of America minor, and he's in control.
Yeah, let's not talk about control. We're talking about shadow government.
Yeah, well, that's
now,
all
which one is the shadow government?
The Americans, not.
Which one of what you just said is the shadow government? Yeah. And you would have answered that like 2 and 2 is 4. That's why we're redundant.
Yeah.
All right, just remind you. Because everybody must be clear on that, including Negro. Because what you're doing now is setting the groundwork so that she doesn't have to do it. That becomes natural to her. That's why we're doing what we're doing. All right? Anybody else? Shadow government? How about y'all?
Right.
Y'all ducking? You're exactly true, yes. Say it all loud.
It's a fake government that is acting in power but isn't fake.
We brought her for you to pick on her because she's in the house acting like she don't. So we brought her to bed and
This is the hand. That's a very good answer. Very good answer. Yours was correct. That was even more correct. Now, close the answer out. Now, this is what we want to make sure that you know what close out is, all right? So now, in law, when you are making an argument on an issue, you can describe the argument. You can refine the argument. You must name the parties. So, are we clear? You can have a great argument. Don't name the parties, your argument fails. Again, that's why we're redundant. Are we clear? Everybody clear? Yeah. Excuse the scribble. Now, you know this one? Civics. That means house. Now, some of you who are older recognize Casablanca in a movie, and they're related to Morocco. So what is Casablanca? Say again? Don't say it with a question mark.
White House.
Exactly. Now that's how you feel talk. With authority. White House. All right? So, how many of you are aware of the fall of the Emirates Palace in Al-Andalusia in 1492? Raise your hand if you are. Don't raise your hand if you're not. Some of the things you're going to write down, because everything I'm not going to necessarily put on the board. So, that's all I almost raised down. All right. Anybody else? The fall of the palace of the Emirates, 1492, is the fall of the Red House. Right? The Red House. And Alhambra is the Red House. Clear? Y'all got that? You got that, little mama? You just saying that. That you be just going along with them. You got that? Alhambra means Red House. Alright? That's the palace, the Emirates Palace in Al-Andalus, that is later, not at that time, later in history called Spain. Are we clear? 1492. Evolved? Say it again. Say it again. Yeah, well, let's take something. Yeah, you're harmonizing. Because it's related. Can't hear it. Yeah, speak a little louder, because they got soft voice, because they can just sing it.
No, I was asking, I was watching something on, I think, here, and they were speaking about Isabel and Fernando. And
Exactly. 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 Now, the fall of the Alhambra which is the Red House, I'm just making some reference points for you, and a lot of the other stuff you have to put together in your mind, all right? All right? The fall of the Alhambra in 1492. That's Granada. In Granada, Al-Andalus, that they later, so in order for your concepts to be right, keep in mind that area was not called Spain at the time. That when you get that in history, that's a retroactive introduction. Are we clear? So when you're reading history, your concept will be that the Moors in Spain, like you'll even see some scholars write about the Moors in Spain, the Moors in Al-Andalus, which is called Spain after the fall. It was called Spain after. It really wasn't called Spain until about 1600s. Are we clear? That area is Al-Andalus. And in the feminine, Al-Andalusia.
Can you spell it?
I was trying not to avoid. I was trying to avoid using the word. Al, A-L, A-N-D-A, L-U-S. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is so that you'll have a better understanding of the history thereafter on our mainlands of the Americas. Are we clear? Because it's not the beginning, but these are keys to the politics that are going on now. Where we're going at right now is to give you a clarity of the politics that's operative right now at Northwest Mexico, North America, all right? And Central and South America, all right? The occupations, and thus the politics. Distinguished from what you're told. Are we clear? Are we clear? So, if we're going to solve problems, we got to know what we're dealing with. And what you discover is most of our people don't know the history, and therefore don't even know what they're dealing with and don't know how to deal with it anyway. Are we clear? That's what I'm saying. All right? Now, so I'm trying to avoid using up the board. So I'm depending on you to write down some of these things, all right? And just use these as mental reference points, all right? Now, with the fall of the palace, that is not the beginning of the fall, and it is not the end of the fall. It's a major landmark stage in the fall of the Moorish Empire. Are we clear? Are we clear? Including the Battle of 1812 on Lake Michigan, too. So you got to understand that these are sequential. But I'm mentioning these things because it's important for you to have the concept of the politics that you're dealing with. All right? Oh, sure. All the time. All right? And keep in mind, what we're talking about is taught to Europeans and also to Masons and people in secret societies, but it's codified. Are we clear? This is to keep it from you. You understand? That's why I want you to try to remember some things, because we need this whole board, basically, to, to give you some sequences. Keep in mind, we got that on here, so it's tight.
When we were coming, we were going to stop and buy you because I'm going to do you're always running out of markers and so we were going to buy you something else.
Makes a big difference. Because the other one, that one belongs to the union, because it doesn't stop erasing. What you want to look at when you're looking at this is basically your understanding why everyone in positions of power in the contemporary world must be a Mason.
Our projections show that by the year 2025, not only America, but the entire planet will be under the protection and the dominion of this power alliance. The gains have been substantial, both for ourselves and for you, the human power elite. You have given us entree to the resources we need in our ongoing quest for multidimensional expansion. And in return, the per capita income of each of you here tonight has grown, in this year alone, by an average 39%. And I have just received word that our forces have won a major victory. The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert. The situation is normal again.
How you doing, boys? I didn't know you'd been recruited. Welcome aboard. You know, you boys really should have dressed for the party now you can afford it. I gotta tell you, I sure am proud to be here. You seen the whole place?
I haven't had a chance to yet.
Come on, I'll show you around. You know, I knew me and you had a lot in common. First time we met. Hey, waiter. Thank you, buddy.
Excuse me. Where the hell are we?
Backstage at the show, boys. I'll admit it is a little funky, but it serves its purpose. How'd you get here? Use one of these little portable jobs? I know we ain't supposed to use them except in cases of emergency, but they're so much fun. Now, you think that's something? Take a look at this. Go on, take a closer look.
Attention commuters. Flight Alpha 7 to Andromeda is now ready for boarding. Please step to the transmission platform.
That's where it come from.
All carry-on luggage must be held securely. Thank you for waiting, and we hope you have a pleasant trip.
I don't know how it works exactly, but it has to do with some sort of gravitational lens deal, bending the light or some damn thing. But you can move from place to place, world to world if you want to. You see, the whole thing, it works like one big airport. Boys, let me tell you, they got their act together. Believe you me.
How many of you ever been or participated in or been a member of the Nation of Islam? All right, actual fact. What is a Mason? Said answer. Well, that's true, but that's not the answer that I'm looking for. That's why I asked. Because I'm going to actual facts. In the nation of, you're not wrong, so don't misunderstand. What I'm asking, in the nation of Islam, you're given lessons. There's one of the actual facts that is given for instruction. And one of the questions is, what is a Mason? Then you give the answer that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad presented. What's the answer? No, that's your knowing as you study. That's not the answer to the actual facts. A Mason is a Muslim son. That's the answer. In the nation of Islam. In other words, you're giving. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave keys, but just like any other operation, they expect people to study.
So in other words, it's kind of like a code.
It's direct, but not necessarily understood if you don't study. You know how like people have a tendency, you give them answers, they have a tendency to be like parrots. They repeat the answer, but upon examination, they don't necessarily understand what you just told them. All right, now, all right, listen. I want to repeat it again. In addition to this now, you have lessons. We're talking about written lessons. We're not talking just the orations. Written lessons. Amongst what's called the actual facts. One of the questions is, what is a Mason? The answer is, a Mason is a Muslim son. All right? Now, there's multiple directions that answer leads you to if you study. If you don't, you just repeat it to pass the test. What he's telling you is history. In other words, if you study, you'll come to this history. If you don't study, you just repeat it because everybody repeats it. You know, like if they test, how much is 1 and 1? 2. You know, everybody says it, man. You know, you ask them to refine it, then they start, I was getting there, and they start that kind of stuff. You know, their concept is not there yet.
So there's a verification.
It's more to it. That's what I'm saying. You understand? All right. Let me just throw some things at you. Say they're brother, sister in the nation, and they study. It's on D yet. This is to give you a sense of the politics, so you'll have to excuse my scribble. So, Red House, White House. Both Morocco. Morocco, part of the empire, and Al-Andalus, Morocco, northwestern Mexico. We're clear. This is key because they give you the misinformation in this period of time with the Columbus story and with Pedro the Moor navigating the Nino, and he navigates them and takes them to the last of the Atlantis Islands, which includes Origane, Dominica, Haiti, etc. That last string of islands of the Atlantis.
Thing that I've explained, it has nothing to do with racism or schism or, you know, in the white man. No, none. This is business. It ain't personal. It's business. There was an agreement that has been going along since the 1930s. Now, I'm pretty sure I may have some people that listen that might be, you know, they might have been born in the 1930s. If you are, I'd love to hear from you. But a lot, I know I was born in 73, so I was made party to an agreement that I wasn't even around for to even say yay or nay. So I'm really a minor in that whole contract. You know, I'm a minor, so I'm in a contract, but I really, you know, it ain't really a lawful contract because I'm not of age. I'm not conscious. You know, it was done before I was born. I'll back up, and I'm kind of mixing terms, but I'm trying to spark your thinking. The repo man wants what's due to them. And if you're holding that card that don't belong to you, you're holding what they want. Now I want you to think about this as I ask this next question. That being the case, give me an example of how you think they're going to collect on this debt that's owed. Go ahead, V. I'm going to go down the line and I want to hear this. How do you think they're going to collect on this debt?
Oh my God. Somebody's ass is going to have to be cashed.
Yes. So I want you to think about. Remember now, I want you to think about the car don't belong to you, so that means everything you use that car for don't belong to you either. Think about all the things that are attached to the funky little car, like your bank account that you think is your bank account. Doesn't your state benefit link to this car too? You know, if you're getting like food stamps, you know, DFACs, family, you know, isn't that attached to the social? You can respond, B. You can respond.
It's all attached.
It's all attached. So everything that you can think of that you hold in a monetary component, 9 times out of 10, is attached to that car that don't belong to you. It's not doom and gloom. You just got to deal with the facts. I'm asking a couple more folks. I want to see this. I want you to think about how you think they're gonna get what's owed to them. Call them. Last four digits of your number is 5116. 5116. How do you think they're gonna collect the debt that's owed to them?
They're gonna repossess, or they're gonna take control, or they're gonna just collect everything that's under that Social Security number, as you stated earlier, or they're going to refinance everything. So, what the national debt was, you know,
okay,
or any future, you know, documents under that, you know, come under a different heading, or they're going to rewrite the script.
Okay. Good response. I want all my trustees thinking. That's a great response. Let me go down the line, because I want to see who's paying attention now. Call the last four digits of your number, 7599. 7599. Give me an example in your own words of how you think they're going to collect this debt that's owed.
Forced labor.
Woo, forced labor. Right, that's a good one. Haven't they proved to us at the beginning? Right, haven't they proved to us at the beginning of the year that you will work for free?
Yep.
800,000 federal employees worked for no pay. They didn't do it for a week. They didn't do it for 2 weeks. They did it, and some of them are still doing it. They're still doing it. So they're showing you through the position of these trustees what they're going to do. They just have to make sure that you have been put on notice. Good response, brother. Good response. Now we come to how this thing unfolds and how we get on top of it. May 14th, which is the day after tomorrow, you will no longer be allowed to get a tax ID number. All right, let's back up. Right now, up until the 14th, you can get a tax ID number without using the social. But after the 14th, it's a wrap. Unless you're in a trust of some sort and you understand what we've been going over for the last 6 to 9, almost 30 some odd months. So I'm putting it in perspective. If you're in this call or in this training and you got family members that got Social Security cards like you, but you have taken the initiative to get your trust together, then through your trust, you can save the rest of your family. And I'm going to show you how. The trust is a public trust, which means the private puts together these things for the public welfare. It's a welfare program. Social Security, DFACS, all this is for the general welfare of the public. They even tell you with Social Security, it's a supplementary income, which means you're supposed to have something else in place. Why? Because they told all the Social Security recipients 6 months ago that your benefits are going to change. That's a notice now. Whether you paid attention to it or not, whether you went to the Social Security Administration website or not, whether you read legislation or not, all they have to do is publicly place that they're making a change to that trust to the beneficiary. And, you know, at that point, it's on you. I'm letting you know that you got the notice 6 months ago. I'm letting you know that you actually got the warning. We're going into the 5th month. We're exceedingly expeditiously moving through the 5th month of this year into the 6th month. So half of the year, quote unquote, is gone. And 3 months before this year came in, they had already told you all this stuff is about to change. How many of you guys remember? How many of you guys know what HR 5404 is? Go down the line. I'm gonna pick on the new person. 8684. Have you heard of House Resolution 5404?
I haven't.
You haven't. You got access to Google?
Yes.
I want you to put in Google, because it's public information. Type in H as in Harry, R as in Ralph, and then the number 5404. And that way you can read what they remember. Every law starts as a bill, then it becomes legislation. And once it becomes legislation, it is the law. So HR 54 it was stated in early March or April, I think, that they were moving legislation to position our economy to go back to a gold standard. Because our currency presently isn't backed by silver nor gold, which under the Constitution is the only thing that's considered constitutional money. Federal Reserve notes, we just described and we just went over. There's nothing federal about the Federal Reserve. They ain't federal and they ain't got no damn reserves. People think it's government. It's a private banking cartel. It's a private trust. And that private trust is staying as trustees of this system that we have to move back. We got to move to a gold standard. Now, what does that do to your savings accounts? What does that do to your bank accounts? I want you to keep listening and just research that as, you know, make a mental note, write it down so you can go back and research it as we go forward. HR 5404 was the public notice that you're not in Kansas no more. We're going back to a gold standard. What does that do to all of the derivatives that's in circulation now? That means, what does government do with money that goes through circulation every year and they have too much in circulation? What does government do? You know, I'm going to talk to some of my older people because they remember us going through this in civics class. What does government do with money every year when it's too much in circulation?
They either burn it or shred it, I think. I don't know.
There you go. That's right. They destroy it. I want you to think about it. You know, everybody around here killing each other over these Federal Reserve notes. You mean the government just sets it on fire? Yep, they set it on fire. They steal it as wrapping paper. They shred it up because if they got too much in circulation, that devalues the dollar. They got to keep just enough in existence to give the appearance that it has value. Now, keep in mind, we're saying it has value because we're talking about trust. If I give you a Ben Franklin, you trust that if I gave it to you, you can give it to Kroger's, right? That's trust, right? You trust and believe that it has value, right? If I give you a Ben Franklin, a $100 bill, and you can take that $100 bill and give it to Kroger's, then that's trust to trust. That's a trust transaction. But is the trust is the transaction actually backed by anything other than the promise to pay? There ain't no gold and silver backing it. You can't even take it back to the Federal Reserve. If you found a $100 bill on the ground, you couldn't drive down, if you're in the Atlanta area, to the Federal Reserve on Peachtree Street. You cannot take that Federal Reserve note back to Peachtree Street and get anything of value for it, because there is no value. It's a faith game predicated upon the people's faith. That's why it's called fiat currency. Add an H to fiat, you got the word what? Faith. Faith currency. You believe in it. It only has value because the trustee said it does. Now, I'm showing you, they're saying, yeah, it's got value, but after this comes into play, it ain't going to have value no more. So what happens to everything that you got with those monopoly pieces of money? What happens? What happens? You can answer me. Yeah. They want to hear from you. They're clinging on you every word. What do you think happens to every...
What happens to the monopoly money after what?
What happens to the monopoly money when they bring in HR 5404?
Which is a new legislation that does what?
Brings gold back behind the currency.
Okay, so then the fiat is non-existent?
Ooh, say it one more time.
So
say it one more time.
It ceases this. If they bring in, okay, hold on a second. You say that the HR bill, what is it?
HR 5404.
They already signed that? That's a real bill?
Look it up.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So basically, this is the inevitable.
Right.
All right, next caller.
This is the writing on the wall. Remember, when trustees do things, they got to put you on notice.
That's the last of the Atlantis Islands. Are we clear? Are you familiar? All right, good. Who's the other mic too? All right, so if anybody wants to speak, use the mic so that you're on tape. Some of you are familiar, some of you may not be. But whenever you look at any of the secret societies, you will see all of their regalia and all of the symbolism that they use are Eastern, what they refer to Eastern. Are we clear? This is why. Are we clear? Now, you also understand, I know you may have heard in school, where the so-called founding fathers had Qurans. That's why. But you need to understand why, not just that they did. You understand? It has to make sense to you, so that, because basically what we're doing is we're putting you back mentally into your proper place in history. This is why we're going through this. Are we clear? Because most of our people speak of themselves in what is known as third person when it comes to the history, only because they don't recognize themselves. Are we clear? So they always speak of their own pedigree like it's some other people. And they refer to themselves by the brand systems that the Europeans gave them. You understand what brand systems are? Negro, black, color, Latino, these type of brands? None of them are real. But that's what our people are used to using when actually they're descendants of the Moors who were defeated. Are we clear? And so even when you see the Europeans making the grand effort to block history, this is why. Because you're the heirs of this estate.
Wow. And this becomes very, 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 how can I say? It becomes very impactful because, see, a lot of individuals take a position where they are victims of a system. they will say that the white man did this, the white man did that. And, if it wasn't for the white man, the white man, the white man. And it's like, let me back you up, brother. If I were to concur and agree with that, look, the white man didn't overcome us and beat us down. They just capitalized on the carnage because we were the first to do it. If there was the first to rob, steal, and pillage, it was Moors that did that. Everything descended from Moors first. Matter of fact, for those of you, and I challenge you, don't believe nothing I'm saying. I challenge you to research it. If you know where the state of Georgia resides, I ask you, what is the capital city of Georgia? What is the capital of Georgia? For those of you that know where the geological location of Georgia resides, in what you call the United States, then what is the capital city of Georgia? Most of you will say that Atlanta is the capital of Georgia. So with that, for those of you that are under that train of thought, I will ask you, was Atlanta always the capital of Georgia? And for those of you that know that Atlanta was not always the capital city of Georgia, then I would ask you, what was the original capital city of Georgia? And then if you would answer and respond that Savannah was the actual capital of Georgia, then I will ask you, well, what happened that caused Savannah to no longer be the capital of Georgia? And I'm going to throw in a clue. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the Federal Reserve was actually created not far from Savannah, in a different territory or region, or lie line, if you will. And then on that lie line, where they created what you call the Federal Reserve, there has to be some sort of underlining symbol that was used. Then if you understand the symbolism between the capital city of Savannah being moved to the capital city of Atlanta, and there was a creature created on an island called Jekyll, which became the Federal Reserve, then you will understand the allegory between when you ran up a debt, you were sent to work that debt off. This is all public history. Like, remember, Moors, if you go to an actual courthouse, which I'm not going to give the name because I'm just trying to keep it in text here, but if you go to Savannah and you just happen to be down a street that they call River, a street named River or a River Street, you can go there and you can see some symbolic things that actually are within a petition. Those of you that are Masons understand the cobblestones. You'll know that they will show you exactly what happened, where to go, and who they're referring to. You will understand that all of the Europeans know their history because they know their history was grafted into existence. That's why all the Eastern Stars teach under the daughters of the American, what they call the daughters of the Revolution, the truth, so they will never forget. So when you start saying the white man, the white man, the white man, the white man also knows that the first slave was white men and white women. The women were forced to concubine, and white men were forced to serve. See, it wasn't the Europeans that came with either worthy to serve or worthy to learn, worthy to learn or worthy to serve. That was Moors. So they got you all focused that all of us derived from slaves, and we all came from Africa on slave ships. When there were slaves that were actually sent from America to other places. And the first to ever do it was a Moor. How many guys think Willie Lynch was actually a European? Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you'll learn. You'll learn. because he already supposed to know this. Because time is of the essence. They took civics out of the school system for a reason.
And all of the colonial debts that was accrued since the Civil War are leaning against the Moorish Empire, i.e. the heirs of the estate, you. This is where your economic problems come from. Do you understand why the redundancy is necessary? Because most of the people don't know that. They have no idea that that's what's going on. They have no idea why poverty is in our communities. They think it's just because they don't have a job or something like that. It's not at all it. Are we clear? And what we want you to do is use your intelligence and start connecting the dots and understand what we're saying to you. Because it is you that have to help cure this. Meaning that me or anyone who has this knowledge who's telling you this is not good enough. It must become your own. Are we clear? And when you answer, just like when you answered a little while ago, that's an answer with authority and power. Confidence. You understand? Yes. Because it has to be a part of you. And as long as it's not a part of you, you will be declared as incompetent. If you don't answer with strength and confidence, you will be declared incompetent. This is why certain things we're redundant with. Are we clear? And it's not to bore you. It is to get it solidly in your head. Because you need to know, particularly now, you really need to know this. And this is in particular because the European is under pressure, and what you have is transference of the most major financial instruments on the planet are being neutralized. And so you will be affected adversely. Meaning that what you call JOBs and stuff like that, you're going to be affected adversely.
You've been put on notice in April.
Or looked at, or that
Yes.
dependent.
I want to welcome y'all all to the 23rd album, Between the Protests. We're going to have to rise on this, y'all. But just before we begin, let me spit on these cats. Fake rappers, I respect none. DJs too. You know my way, we ain't you. 5, 4, and 3 are taken and we ain't 2. 33 years later, we ain't through. Black lives been mad as yo, cause we ain't blue. Selling out the culture, that is something we don't do. They call me the teacher, that be so true. Cause I mastered the element of MCing like CO2. We so new, you know what we've been through just to survive. All this debate about the top 5, put it aside. Here's the real top 5 list. It's KRS, Blastmaster, KRS-One, the teacher, and Chris. Rappers going through some type of identity crisis. G.O.D. is my image and likeness, they don't like Chris. My mother is Aset, better known as ISIS. I drop on the set like Horace with a mic is. I'm the difference between what the real and the hype is. What the wrong and the right is. What the darkness and the light is. But rappers want to fantasize about battling me. They sleeping over their whole head like a canopy. I'm chilling in Atlanta sipping daiquiris. Don't come after me, I rapid fire, rap rapidly. It's a catastrophe, you not as fast as me. OG rappers coming after me, they ain't back of me. You wanna come after me, here's the truth. I'm invading your space like I'm the loose. Let's get loose. You can't hang, I got the noose. When I train on tracks, I'm the engine unit caboose. I'm sipping the Remy Mall while I salute Papoose. I don't battle young rappers, that's child abuse. I'll tighten the noose, put my hands on you like I'm a masseuse, and daylight your soul like I'm pasta noose. You'll be calling for a truce while I'm cooking your goose. Got the deuce, so when you chickens come home to roost, man, I'm mobile like Boost while they failing. So I'ma put them down under like these dudes was Australian. Rappers couldn't see me in the 80s or the 90s. 30 years later, they wanna act like they grimy. Now they wanna find me in a new millennium, but I'm a cannibal. I'll breakfast, lunch, and dinner them.
Actually, early part of January when they first started talking about it, when they signed it, it was right around, March, April. HR 5404. Now, because everything that you've got presently saved in those Federal Reserve notes, that fiat currency, you can't put it on a ledger the same way you would want to do it. Now I'm talking to all you guys that are all wrapped around this 1040, 1041. How do I'm trying to tell you. You can't record that cash as an asset and not be made liable. Matter of fact, let me tell you what has happened to a lot of people already. They were so anxious to get their little refund that they volunteered for the debt. So that means now everything that you got for Federal Reserve notes is subject to go what? Up in smoke. The repo man's coming to get it. Because when the new standard kicks in, it ain't about, I'm telling you, when you hear about the global reset, this is the global reset in my personal professional opinion. The global reset is breaking back of this gold standard. And you now have to go back to the place and declare your assets. And your Gucci bag, your Air Jordans, all that bullshit you bought with Federal Reserve notes are not, I repeat, you can't put them on a balance sheet. They're not an asset. An asset doesn't depreciate. If it loses value, it is not an asset. It's a liability. It's a liability. It is a liability. I'm now putting on my accounting hat. For those of you who don't know, at one point in time, I operated as a certified public accountant. So I'm telling you what the accountants won't tell you. You're not in Kansas no more. And you put my income is, and they say, okay, well, how did you get your income? Well, my job paid me. Well, what do they pay you with? Keyword, you can't pay a debt with a debt. So you're saying all the wrong stuff, thinking you're getting a benefit. When in all actuality, you just signed up for the debt. Because all they're going to do is remove it out of circulation and it's musical chairs. If you still got it and they don't want you a gold standard, you can only get a one-time exchange. Hear me clearly. And I'm before I give you the answer, without putting everybody on Front Street, I'm just going to pick somebody. I'm going to go to 6658. That's 6658. I'm going to go to 6658. 6658. What this means in terms of a balance sheet is whatever you have purchased with those Federal Reserve notes that are no longer, that have been backed by gold and silver since 1930. And in 1971, they removed the silver standard and they brought back up HR 5404. Whatever you got with that is subject to be taxed heavily because they get back to a gold standard, and you're only gonna get a one-time exchange of $100,000. So I'm gonna show you the reason why this class is one of the most important things you're gonna hear today, this week, that you can start doing something tomorrow, is because of what I'm about to ask. If you only get a one-time exchange of $100,000. Can you intend people in your immediate circle that if this goes into effect, which is already in effect, that's why we're at war, that's why we're in war with Iran and all these other countries, because they have moved away from the dollar. They're doing business with gold and silver. We're still trying to hold on to this funky little piece of paper. Do you know 10 people within your family that has an access of $100,000 that they can make a one-time exchange for the gold-based currency? No. I want y'all to hear this clear. I'm not putting the brother on the spot. I want the class to understand the actual state of emergency, national emergency that they've been talking about, that they've been pussyfooting around with, that is in effect. If you don't know 10 people in your immediate family that cannot put their assets together and make a one-time deposit of $100,000, you will not be allowed to exchange under HR 5404. That's why this is important. That's why I'm feeling blue.
Okay. Let me clear it up. Now, I did that broadcast a few years ago. That wasn't just recently. That class was 2 years ago. That's a 2-year-old class that I was doing this with. So, you're not in Kansas no more. But I brought this up because it's still relevant today because a lot of people don't even realize this is the perimeter of what you're in. We discussed this 2 years ago. If you don't have 10 people in your family right now that doesn't have in their possession $100,000 to make that one-time exchange, you're being excluded out of this plan. Matter of fact, they've already made plans. Why do you think COVID is what it is? Why is everybody walking around with face diapers on? That's what I call it, face diapers. Why are you wearing a face diaper? See, it's because you have to be controlled. You have to be told what to do. You have to be told what to do. You know, they have already educated you and your children to a point where you trust the system. And since you trust the system is now disseminating exactly who you are and where you need to be. And because of that, you know, the writing on the wall is, again, you're supposed to be in a position where at least 10 of your family members can, if they need to make that one-time exchange, can, for the sake of the rest of the family. And if you're not in trust, if you're not understanding current expected credit loss provisions, you don't understand HR 5404, and you have not called one word of what Taj Tariq Bey has said about the shadow government, you're in a lot of trouble. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something.
As what you might call or think is your security are going to be neutralized. Are we clear? So it's important for you to have this information because you're going to have a sense of knowing what to do other than what you've been doing. Are we clear? Because if you think you're not going to be doing something different, don't hold your breath because you will be. So if you're depending on the system for sustenance, don't hold your breath. And get prepared to move with the changes that are definitely coming, not maybe, definitely coming, are we clear? And in order to understand it, you must know what's happening, can't be guessing.
Okay, well, what I'm attempting to do, I'm going to see maybe if I got any questions, because it's going to get a little interesting. And I don't want people to feel like I'm just leaving them behind. So I'm going to open up the floor right now to see if we got any questions or anything they've heard up until this point.
All participants are unmuted.
All right, if you can hear me, I don't need the line. I want to see if anybody was able on the call line got any questions, comments, or concerns or anything they heard up until this point. Let's see. Do we have anybody on the call line that have any questions, comments, or concerns or anything they heard up until this point?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So when you were saying that the you can't get EIN without a social anymore, that was 2 years ago. But the only way you can get a EIN now without a social is getting 9/8 EIN.
You know how to do the 9/8. That's the foreign identifier. That's still applicable.
That's still what?
That's still applicable.
Okay. Now, when you were saying, but that recording you said was all the stuff that you were saying was 2 years ago, right. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so now, in the interest of giving back, so basically what you were kind of saying was you can't what are they looking for? So, for instance, how are you going to pay for the tax, right? So if you gave your social, not your social, I'm sorry, if you signed over your certificate, trust certificate, and gave it back, like signed the back of it and gave it back or sent it back to Vital Records or whatever under notary presentment, aren't you pulling yourself out of that system, essentially?
If you do a notary presentment in that manner, and you do it properly, yeah, because anything that's done outside of law is considered not done.
I can't hear you.
You can literally, anything that you do in the aspect of contracting. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. All right. So anything that you do in the aspect of contracting, you can technically use a notary presentment to correct it. And you can definitely utilize it in a way which will get you in right standings. Well, let's call everything exactly what it is. If you are a creditor, then you can regain and stay in the right position, treat everything as an arm's distance dealing. If you are a debtor screaming bloody murder and you're not being responsible, you're not doing the right thing, you just because you can, you just feel that it's yours and you want it, then you got to be very mindful of your come from. Like, there are a lot of individuals that have already sold themselves out for a few pieces of silver. And I can tell in just their delivery, I can tell when I'm asking for certain things from when it comes to accounting, like, okay, they have not divested themselves in any of this stuff. So if you ain't divested yourself in this stuff, then you're going to have to man up. And, because you contracted with these fools. You know, you haven't corrected the contract. You haven't changed your status. You know, now you got trustee in front of your name, or doctor, or L, or whatever it is you got going on. That's great. That's appellation. But it ain't about what you say, it's about what you do. And commercially, you have not taken the role of a fiduciary. You're a beneficiary. And see, the IRS is going to simply ask you, well, you say you paid for your house. With what? And you start saying, well, I paid for it with the money I got from my job, and wrong answer. Because there ain't no money.
So how do you get around? If at the end of the day, you can't go to, so I can't take my, say, okay, hey, I'm ready to turn in these promissory notes and grab my lawful legal money. How does that work?
Well, see, you said the key thing. See, if you clean up your language and in the right position, you can. It's like, here's what it sounds like to me. It's like you're going to walk out into traffic, and you're not going to look at oncoming traffic, and you're going to wonder why you get hit by the bus. Like, you're trying to walk out in traffic where it's wide open and not even look at oncoming traffic. Like, the bus is going to stop because you decided to cross the road. That's what you're doing when you don't do the accounting and take the right position. So to answer your question, if you do what fiduciaries do, you will be able to, because the system actually says you ain't spent enough of this monopoly money. So we gotta balance the book. But hearing the information and then hearing accounting and then don't even talk about accounting unless somebody else bring it up, that is going to hurt so many of our people. Like, I see it with their tax returns right now. They don't even get the fact that you volunteered for the tax. How are you going to unvolunteer? Can you unvolunteer?
Well, I thought we were supposed to pay the tax in order to stay in honor.
There you go. Remember, so watch this. Most individuals are trying to say, here's my favorite question that they ask. Like I had a trustee ask me today, Gazelle, what do I do about my state taxes? And there's a reason why, there's a reason for the season. I was like, okay, I go into who are you? I'm the trustee. All right, so what about the state taxes? Well, how do I get, and this is what they, so I'm like, you got to call things what they are, because if you be very vague, You're asking me to give you a very straight and to the point, but you're being very vague in your response because you're not. If you know what you're asking, you'll ask it. If you're vague, you gotta understand they write the law very broad so they can stroke you into it. They're gonna be vague. The public is very vague on all the stuff they're talking about. You're thinking they're talking about this, and they're really talking about something. They're just vague about it. So your questions have to be very direct. Like you have to understand that you're not allowed to create debt derivatives, even though everything you've been taught, you've been trained to create debt. Like it's not even. You know, you live in a world. Like how many cars have you bought in your lifetime? Let me use that as an example. How many vehicles have you have actually quote unquote purchased? You need to be real careful how I'm saying this.
Now, 7.
All right, so let's say you have actually purchased 7 automobiles. How many of those 7 automobiles you purchased that before you did anything, you sat there and read the contract from cover to cover?
Say it again, how many out of those 7 have I what?
Sat and read the entire contract before you entered into any agreement.
2.
Okay. So on the other 5, you just transacted first and then looked at the contract later.
So give me some keys. Oh, let me say, what do I sign? That's
Right.
exactly how it was.
Right. All right, so here's the deal. The rule is everything that you did not read, all they have to do is put it in writing somewhere that they made it available where you could either have it, you got it on your person, or it's somewhere accessible. That's all they have to do. If they're saying that by getting this automobile, it's going to break down in 5 years, it's not really an asset, it's this, that, and the other. They got that printed somewhere in teeny tiny microscopic print somewhere on your contract that you never read. They have not done anything wrong.
Correct. I agree with that.
So,
But
on
that
that,
contract, if I sign that, then I'm completely at fault. Because at the time I was ignorant.
right.
I'm not saying that that's a pass because ignorance of the law is no excuse, but I still at that time had a remedy.
Right. You always have a remedy. That's the thing. Creditors always have remedy. When your remedy is, okay, what do I do about my state taxes? Is your trust regulated by the state? Now, if you thought through your question that you asked, Gazelle, what do I do about my state taxes? Now, you didn't give me enough information because who are you? You know, that's why I know who you are, but no, I don't. Who are you in this transaction? Because that's not enough information. You're trying to get, if you're trying to collect the state tax, listen to me carefully. If you're trying to collect the state tax, the question will be, as a fiduciary, I have a public obligation, and I have assessed the books, and I realize that this particular amount is owed to the estate, from the state of. Then, okay, now we can go into the 1,000,001 Dalmatians of how to do it. I'm becoming very reluctant to give any remedy when I'm unclear on your intentions. You got to treat me like a 6-year-old. Like I don't know who you are. What do you mean? You're not the boss of me. I don't understand what you mean because I have no reference point. That's a very broad, what do I do? I don't know what you're going to do. You know, I don't know. If I start saying I don't know, then you're really stuck. What do you mean you're supposed to know? No, I'm not. You're supposed to know. You're supposed to tell me what you want to do. It's no way to convey what you should do if you have not. Let's go back to what makes a good trustee. You heard when Brother Street talk about you're supposed to be plotting out your day, like literally writing out. And wake up at 8 o'clock. I'm going to do my workout at 8:30. I'm going to meditate at 8:45. I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to read. You need to plot that out. You know why? Because you can always go back to that. That's knowing and admitting. And and it also shows the state of mind you was in when you was doing certain things. This is what you felt. When you looked at the economy, this is what you were thinking. That's a good trustee. These are reference points that you can use in your explanation, but it's like to ask a blanket, because I'm trying to get everybody out of making statements. and then strictly in fact. And if it is not math, if you're not asking me mathematical, algebraic questions, it's very difficult for me to give you a response. Not, at least not one that you really want to hear. I'm saying it ain't the right one, it ain't what you want to hear. Someone said, well, Giselle, what is the black and white? It's like, okay, well, define black and white. Now, if black is 10 and white is 100, okay, now we got something to deal with because everything in your assembly uses multiples of 10 and 100. The words must make sense mathematically. That's why, a lot of the trustee etiquette is figures of speech. You have to literally, in commerce, you have to talk to the subject to get to the math. If the question is not a mathematical question, I'm not saying it's not useful information. I'm simply saying where are we going legally with this? Because they got colorable law to color all those gray areas. And as a notary, if a notary, especially the notaries actually, you gotta understand, it's not civilians. If you're a civilian and you're asking these questions, then I'm gonna go that extra mile to explain because you're using a whole bunch of stuff you shouldn't use. But if you're a notary, I have very pointed responses because the notary can act in the public and private. I'm just like, well, what do you want to do? Because remember, whatever you're doing, you're not doing for you. You're doing it because you got a fiduciary duty. Here's the biggest one. Aren't you under a non-disclosure? So I really get confused when you're asking me, I want to commingle. Giselle, can I? I'm like, oh, if that's what you want to do, but you're not going to get me saying that you can do it. I'm a co-sign on everything you want to do as a notary, public or private, because it's whatever you want to do, you can. Now, what I try to circle back around to is this inside of your trust res that you're asking? What particular article is that? Like, show me where you can do this, and then you just answer your own question. I don't have your trust res in front of me.
Okay, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, as a notary, so let's just say I'm the one that asked about the state tax, and I say, okay, so let's just say I asked property. Okay, well let's just say I did. My true question to you would be, okay, hey, I am the fiduciary, I am notary, but I don't know a lot about taxes. So at this point, I need some help on knowing how to or when to file the state taxes. So if I come to you, because at this point I thought we were in a student-teacher relationship.
Right. And we are. The responses of what I'm saying is to force you to think. Because here's where we have to share responsibility. There is a very specific reason why I will answer any question outside of my trust res. You know what that is? My trust res is embedded in me that I cannot create liability. So, when you ask me a question, and even though I don't give you the answer, it's like, why he won't? Because evidently, it's creating a liability for him. Because he's not his trust res doesn't create liability.
Right.
So, this is that's why I'm sticking to my responses the way I am. Because I want you, the questions you're asking, you got to be a part of it. Because questions that are thrown to and fro, it's a two-way mirror. Like, I don't have a public obligation, nor do I want one. So, and I'm not a notary, so I'm confused on when notaries ask those type of questions. But I don't question the question, I just respond with who are you, so I'm clear.
Wait a minute, you say you're not a notary, but you are a notary. You're civil law notary. So is that not
Listen, you're asking me, how do I get my state file? the state and filing are colorable terms in the public. As a civil law notary, when I hear that, why am I conforming to the lesser when the greater has influence over the lesser? What is the point? What is the benefit? There's no benefit. It's only liability.
So basically, you said if you're not charging state taxes as a creditor, then you don't need to be fooling with state taxes as a creditor.
Take what you're saying and come full circle with it. In order for you to collect the taxes, demonstrate that you charge such.
I got you. Okay. So
you know what I'm saying? You're the creator. Quit trying to let something outside of you be the change you want to see. Be the change.
I get it.
Be the change. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. See, the key to it is you're the creator. And creators create. You can't be private and not create. That's another thing I hope everybody should be getting by now. The minute you're trying to do something and you're not trying to create something to do it, well, how do you think the answer is going to come? I ain't going to talk you out of it. I'm just going to ask why.
Okay, so let's talk about how to bring. I think I'm stuck in a rock and a hard place. Be it overstanding and just I'm still green in the sense of creating, being a creator, if you will.
Right.
So in that, as a fiduciary, as a responsible fiduciary, I'm looking to take care of some very important debt obligations.
Okay.
In that, I'm in a rock and a hard place because where I need to take care of those debt obligations, the receiver, or I guess I should say the where I am in that contract or in that trust,
right?
The people that I need to take care of in regards to that debt are not looking for lawful legal money. They're looking for fiat because that's what they're used to dealing with. But that also pulls me out of my quote unquote. Well, no, it really doesn't pull me out of my trust regs because in my trust regs, I'm allowed to use fiat where it's necessary.
Right.
So in that, how do I make that transition? Because my book say this, my transmittal bond in regards to just the tax return, I have an actual transmittal number on that. And I also have where the trust has done some an international case, and has a international judge. So, and there's a transmittal bond attached to that. Where do I change that into something that I can use today in order to get to navigate to be able to use that fully? Because where I am, I'm gonna say it like this: where I am, and in my movements today, the 5404 is important and it's coming to fruition, but it's not here yet. So today I have to live. Today I have to move. Today I have to operate in commerce. And right now, when I present lawful legal money, everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy or giving me a notice to vacate or my stuff is going to get shut off or whatever the it is. So at this point, I know there's a remedy, but I'm not getting any help on what that remedy is. And I've exhausted all of my possibilities in my book of knowledge, I should say it that way.
Okay. All right. So your contractors are not under anonymous disclosure. You are under conventional means and methods. So that tells me that you need a segregate if you're not able to meet the obligations of the conventional wisdom. In other words,
you say that tells you what?
That tells me, okay, from a commercial standpoint, okay,
what you just explained is that most of your creditors, quote unquote, in the aspect of compensation, we know who the creditor, who's the debtor, but we're going to, for compensation purposes, your contracting, there isn't nothing compelling them to use lawful legal money because of consent. So, without getting your stuff interrupted, how do you give everybody what they want? They want fiat, and you want to give them fiat, from what I'm listening to. From what
I prefer to use lawful legal money, but they're not accepting that.
So let's back up. So if I'm the creditor, let me give an example. When I issue lawful legal money for my public obligations, it's not whether or not they will accept it or not, because they either accept it or there is no debt. The question, I think, is, can you get that? Well, of course you can. It takes, you got to contract and be able to enforce it. How you enforce those contracts is you got to understand that you are the creditor. Now, on their paperwork, you're the debtor. You got to change that. And the only way you can change that is you got to bring something in to be your segregate. See, I'll give you an example. If you are in trouble with the car dealership and you haven't made your car payment in the last 6 months, and then you call me, and then I decide, okay, well, let me see what I can do to assist. So I get into a dialogue. All right, remember, I don't owe these individuals anything, so I'm going to contract off the Muslim in such a way where they have to do it. Now, I want you to do the exact same thing. Remember, you're a notary. Did the notary contract with these folks, or did the debtor contract with these folks?
The debtor.
Okay, all right. So if the debtor contract with him, you need to bring in a creditor. Now, telling me and telling my friends that I'm a creditor is one thing. Acting as such is totally different. A creditor's going to coming in with the remedy in hand. Look, I got this fiat for you, but I need you to fill out this 1099 OID. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Like, you have to assert. This is just, I'm just having a private conversation. You ask the question. This is, because everybody wants to know, how would you do it? What do I do? It's like, it sounds like to me, if you want to use lawful legal money, you need to get them into a contract to do so. And there's thousands of ways to contract. It doesn't fall short of you. Like, okay, it's you. You're going to have to do something. Like, you're going to have to create the situation, the scenario, and bring a segregate in to do so. You're going to have to do that. And there are plenty of ways to do it. The question will be, what is the most cost-effective, time-efficient way to do it? Now, again, right.
And that's my, because at the end of the day, if I'm, so just say, for instance, I'm renting a house. Right. And at this point, I know I have the lawful legal money to pay the mortgage, or let's just say the rent. I'll call it the rent.
Right.
Okay, and then, okay, well, you haven't paid this month, and we don't wait for payment. Right. So I'm them with a surrogate, for instance, right. And I'm like, okay, well, they've already made it very clear. Look, we don't take anything, but if it needs to be cash, we'll take cash. Uh-huh. We'll take cashier's check, and we'll take a personal check. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to come with, let's just say, a lawful legal money order. And they're like, no, well, what's this? Right. I'm like, it's money.
Right. So
they bring the surrogate, and that, so when you say bring the surrogate, that could be any notary. Let's just say I'm surrounded by notaries that are familiar with how to operate in commerce.
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Civil law notaries that know how to operate in commerce and know how to do notary presentments, and they are willing to be the surrogate, but at the same time is of the essence. So now they're not willing to
Where's your mommy?
outside of what was stated. So they want lawful legal money. I'm sorry, they want fiat.
Right.
They want personal checks.
Right.
From the bank.
Right. Right. So there.
You don't start your own.
And so I told you to come over here and do your own.
Right. Like you can literally, in the aspect of
Me and
contract,
Connie girl, because I'm trying to do the thing now. And then Jamie got bank account.
the segregate comes into the scenario. Like what I want to do, let me read for my thought. Everybody get it.
Okay, so can you go on, can you go in on, you got online banking set up? You come to CGG?
All participants are muted.
Okay. All right. Now, hopefully you can hear me. I won't get any feedback. All right. Put everybody on mute for a second. Here's how you would utilize the segregate. What you would want in that aspect of contracting is the ability to bring a lawful legal notary in and contract in that format. Now, if the person who you've been giving fiat to all the way up until last month, it's going to be difficult for them to just accept change when they've been getting fiat for the last 6 months. So that's kind of an uphill battle. So the segregate in this scenario, from what it sounds like to me, which I think could work, is question number one: where can you get the fiat? Is the fiat coming that just hadn't got here yet, or that's number one. You got to figure that out. So if you're going to have fiat at a future date, then you need a segregate to be able to step in and create a scenario where you'll have time to do all these things. Because see, here's the thing about time. Everybody that's in the debtor seat right now, you're subject to how the creditors want to do it. The creditors can say, well, we're going to foreclose on you, we're going to take you this, we're going to put you out, and they will be well within their realm to do so because you have an agreement to pay them in this, that, and the third. Now, there are some exceptions to the rules if you got to get your fiat from another source because of the lack of, which is going to create a time issue. You may be working with a nonprofit organization that utilizes promissory notes. And again, I'm dealing with a scenario with one of my students who is using promissory notes to pay their rent and mortgage and things of that sort, until they, come back on, better times. And it's being done all through promissory notes. But again, it was a process. They had to go through the pains of contract with these people. And on more than one occasion, it wasn't just they get it just right the first time. No, they had to go back and forth. They had to go through a shut-off period. They had a utility shut-off because they never knew how to do a promissory note. But at the end of the day, they was able to stick to their process, and now they're 3 months in this COVID thing, and it's being paid by promissory notes. So time and contracting is what you need. And your ability to utilize the segregate to give you time to contract properly, and that is what, in my opinion, professionally, is what you're going to need. Because there are ways of doing it. You can have someone like a notary who will step in and do so, but they're going to need time and contracting to do that. And so that's what's going to get everybody over here. Because at the end of the day, it's accounting. The person who you're dealing with, they're not no tax expert or accounting expert either. They're hounding you because what? Somebody's hounding them. And so you have to understand that, so they're going to beat you black and blue because they're being beaten black and blue. The faster you get to that part of, okay, how do we help each other? I got a group that's willing to do so, but again, they don't know you from a can of paint, and they got protocols they got to go through. So they got to have X, Y, and Z in order for it to go. Now, you got to understand, there are so many entities that are asking or doing so many things. It's hard. The system don't trust the system. That's why there's only certain things they'll deal with. So, it's perfect time for a public official like a notary with an administrative process and presentment to help, individuals in that particular component, but they can't have a financial gain in doing so. They have to be retained for those services, and they have to provide those things in order for it to be profitable. Like, a transmittal bond works with the banks. The banks love transmittal bonds, but the poor people that have bank accounts don't know how to use no damn transmittal bond. They don't even know how to balance their checkbook. So if they can't balance their checkbook, how the hell are they going to use a transmittal bond? So you're going to have to go, you got to go to them to get to the people who can make all that happen. And that's kind of hard when everybody's kind of, they're not looking at oncoming traffic, and they're walking out in front of a Mack truck that can't stop on the dime. That's what you're doing when you don't use accounting in commerce. It's the equivalent of walking in the oncoming traffic and expecting not to be hit. I'm going to unmute the line because I'll get a little bit of feedback. So just bear with me. There we go.
All participants are unmuted.
All right, everybody's on mute. Now I can hear you now. Just Empress, you got any other questions?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess so would you say that there are people at the bank that love transmittal bonds? What can we role play in that conversation? What does that look like? Can we do a Brandon Adams role play or something to figure that one out? Because I have problems with getting that person on the line.
Yeah, first of all, you're not going to get them on the line. They're going to call you. Like, I give you an example. If they don't understand your process, the bank will call fencing, just like Brandon would give you an example of. So it's like, Brandon's checking on why they haven't credited his account back, and they need to say, hold please. They put him on the phone with fencing. Like, do you know, this, that, and the other. This was before he understood trusteeship and so forth. So transmittal bonds are kind of like that. If you got one, it's a special department that handles those type of transactions. So you got to figure out with the person you're contracting, like, let me give you the loan point of view. You're going to have to create a contract. You're going to have to create a trust. And then you're going to take all that and then stop talking to folks that don't know and use that trust and agreement to get to that point. Like, you know what, as a creditor, this is how I get through it. So I'm going to show you. I take the same approach they take. When creditors call, they have that tone in their voice and they want to speak to the person that's on the account and this, that, and the other because they got a debt to resolve. That's the same approach I do when I'm using the administrative process. I call the bank, but I very rarely do that if I literally got to put the client into a trust. And I got to have their date of birth, social security number, firstborn, and all that because I'm finna pull out all the stops to get to who I need to get this done. I'm a creditor just like everyone else. And they're holding up my money. I need y'all to sign this form and sign this note so we can all get paid. And I don't need Becky doing it. I need Joan, who is the CFO. So you have to kind of take that approach. You have to come in, ask the fiduciary, you put it out there, you know the things that you need. Like on your transmittal bond, you need someone who understands accounting to be able to, so you're going to have to ask those hard-pressed questions on who does that. If you don't know, please get me a number, a name, and an extension. If you're just up front taking names and numbers, I think you can get me some more names and numbers of who can help. I need to talk to someone who deals with transmittal bonds. I need to speak to someone that's in wealth management. So the dialogue and script can get very direct. Let's keep it basic and fundamental because my words probably won't help you because they have to be your words. fundamentally, you have to come in as a notary that has an account that you must settle within the next 10 business days, and it will be to their advantage to do X, Y, and Z. And I will go into the fact that I have an affidavit and your failure to act in a certain way makes you like that. So, you let them know that the mere fact that I'm calling, I'm getting results. So I'm either going to go to the person that's going to get this done, or I'm going to have a claim with your name on it stating that you prohibited this from being done. So either the write-up is going to look like this, or the write-up is going to look like that. But since I've been called in, I got to write something up. So what am I writing up? I'm writing up the fact that you're going to get me the right person, or you're going to be the person that's going to be the one liable. Either way, it completes my exchange. Because I'm a public official. This is commercial registry. You're holding up, it's a lot of ways to go in that conversation. The fundamental is you have to have all of the elements. You can't have just earth and wind. You got to have earth, wind, and fire. You got to have it all. You got to have all the elements. To enforce your contract, you got to have an agreement. Technically, if I'm dealing with a fiduciary who don't know their fiduciary, I give them an application and say, fill this out. You fill this out, it's back to me signing the penalty of perjury, and I'll do the rest. And I'll take whatever it is we're trying to do with lawful legal money, I'll use that contract to get it done. Now, when I say get it done, I'm not trying to give them a fee out if I don't have to either, because I don't have to as a fiduciary. I don't owe these people nothing. All I'm here to do is what they do, put people on notice. And that's all I'm going to do. The faster I can do that, the less headache I have. So it's different variables that you would use. But there's an energy to go with it. Some people you can fill them out. Some people you feel, maybe I can't talk to this person like a human being. Because I try to give everybody, when you talk to them like a human being, and you're not combative, but you want to help, people tend to like you more. And when they like you more, they'll do more for you. I had to deal with a lot of, people got very, these folks use accolades in front of their name after their name. Their egos are real fragile. So you got to stroke a lot of egos. I know you don't know what the hell you're doing, but I got to make you feel like you're the best person ever done it. Just to get to the next person. So, technically, you would literally have to have whoever's that fiduciary. All right, I'll use real estate as an example. You know how if you're trying to stop a foreclosure and have a client do a quick claim to another party who can then utilize some different things to get a result? You know what I mean with that? Okay, so kind of use that scenario. What you gotta typically do is you gotta have the person who is, all right, let's say for instance, you're trying to pay someone and you're trying to pay them lawful legal money. Well, you gotta do a contract where they almost like quick claim that account too for you to get it resolved. And then you jump in as a fiduciary and you get it done. If you want to do it with lawful legal money, that's what you do. Whatever your process is, that's how you contract. Now, if you ask me, wait, should I use this process or that process? That is a very vague question because you can do whatever you want. You can pay it with coffee beans. You can pay it with staples. You can pay it with tax returns you're going to get in 2025. You do a whole lot of stuff. You're not limited by your ability to contract because you can create the contract. There isn't a template or a script on your ability to create. Don't be afraid to create the remedy that you want. You got to know what you want. If you want to, now, and I did learn this over the weekend because I'm constantly learning, sometimes you got to pick your battles. Now, sometimes we have to know when to hold and when to fold. Some battles you're too deep in it to get out of your own way. You might have had some words with these people. You done made a contract, but we love to talk on the phone to these fools. You done did a contract, it's already in stone. Then 10 minutes later, they call you or one of the other agents call you. You just undid your first contract by talking to them again. So when it gets to be that burdensome, in my opinion, find a fiat, get you some time, and stay on point. Now, it doesn't stop with, here's what people think, well, I get them fiat, it's over with. No. As a fiduciary, all fiat did is it bought you some time. That's all it did. You don't have a money problem, you have a time. You got a time management problem. Because if fiat's going to come, you just don't have it right now, then you got to have it on a schedule. You still got to do the same accounting whether you use fiat or not. It's just that if you're a creditor and you want to use lawful legal money, then you got to get into that role of doing it. And it takes a segregate. Now again, they got their systems, they got their things, they're in a whole different space. Now, I can't go on the air and tell you of a direct proprietary process to do this. And not that I don't know how, it's just that to save myself the pain and anguish, there are some things you can do to buy yourself some time legitimately. But you got to understand where is your remedy going to come. Let me say this the way we would get it. Let me ask you a question. How long would it take you to come up with the fiat that you're looking for? Because to get them the fiat just gets that taken care of. That doesn't do anything for your bookkeeper.
You said how long would it take to get the fiat in my possession?
Right. Like, okay, whatever you're asking for. All right. How long was it?
For instance, I don't know because so I'm going to use my situation now as a catalyst. Okay, for me, I'm working on minimal amounts of, we'll just say fiat, because right now the IRS, okay, let's just say I do taxes, and I have several tax returns completed and in the system, but because of the stimulus package and the rebate that they tacked on to the IRS stimulus rebates, that's holding up tax returns. So some people getting their tax returns. So I actually talked to a IRS agent Friday. She was a supervisor, and basically she said we have a right to pay or not pay if we so choose, and we can mark all tax returns as frivolous if we so choose to, and it's up to you to prove that it's not. So I'm at that point. I had to recognize, okay, this is not going to be a valuable steady income for me anymore, because now as I know how to respond. Again, response takes time. They've already held up tax returns that I filed back in October, November, May, and December of last year. And we're in a whole nother year, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, we received your response. You got the green card, and yeah, you got proof that it was sent, but we ain't decided to read it. So I don't know when they're going to, when the funds become fruition or when they're going to pay out. I don't know. So I'm like, now if we use that as an example of the income, I have no idea. I have no idea when any fiat will hit my hands. I don't have, in some of the returns we asked for back in bond. Have no idea when that's going to happen. And it seems like that was an issue for them anyway. Like, oh, they got smart enough to get to ask for bond? Oh, okay, well, they're going to wait today. So I don't know.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you know of any industry that you have any affiliation with where fiat can come by providing some sort of service that could be done in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, I cannot hear anything. Can you
okay, so do you have in your skill set the ability to perform a service for an entity which will result in you being compensated for in fiat in the next 5 to 10 days?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let's start there. Alright. Getting it from one source doesn't stop the other 9,900,000 other ways to get it. So to put it in perspective, there's, you line yourself up with that energy to get it. So the timeline still stands. Do you think it'll take you 30 days to come up with the amount of fiat that's necessary to get their books in order while you're still trying to do all this other stuff? Because, see, everybody is going to be waiting on anything in the public. Now, so I want you to understand this. If you are a public entity, just like you're waiting on the IRS, every other public entity is waiting on somebody in the public. Now, if they're providing some other product or service where they're being compensated for this, that, and the other in terms of labor, then, that money still got to come. And it's all coming from bonds and things of that sort of insurances. So, case in point, even though it sounds like mission impossible, it really isn't. You just got to know when to be the trustee and not be the trustee. So, in the aspect of contracting, your segregate is going to say, look, in order for us to compensate you, we're going to have this, and this. Now, the faster you get this to us, the faster we can give you what you're looking for. I can't give you a time frame on how long it's going to take for you to be compensated because I don't know how long it's going to take for you to get this form, and that form. But if you get that form to me on Monday, chances are in the next 5 to 10 business days, you should have compensation in hand. Now, I'm leaving a lot of stuff out. I'm leaving a lot of colorful ways you can go with this. But I got a lot of people listening, so I don't want to get nobody in trouble. I'm going to say that when one door closes, 10 more open up. So if the tax business is not as fruitful as it once was as far as fiat concerned, that doesn't mean you abandon the tax practice. That just means you got to look at, what in taxes is paying. Because, listen to what I'm about to say. I know for a fact that because they're holding up returns, they're going after everything that ain't nailed down. And I know individuals that say, I can either pay Uncle Sam $1 million or pay you 10 grand. I'm going to pay you 10 grand. Because me spending this with the other guys down the street that's got a law firm has got me where I'm at right now. And at least I'm seeing results just from what you're giving me and what I'm making the clip of. I need to can you read in between the lines of what I'm saying? Can you read in between the lines of what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. You're saying just because that situation isn't working out doesn't mean that I can't use let's just say my civil law notary skills.
Not only that, the mere fact that everybody in the public is in a tax issue.
Huh?
Everybody that's in the public is in some sort of tax issue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can bring forth remedy because knowledge is power. See, some people, just like how you want to get your situation taken care of, it's going to take fiat to buy you time. So you need to be in front of a client that has an even bigger issue. And you stepping in to help solve that problem takes care of your problem.
Well, I was kind of trying to do that, but I don't see an end. I don't even see. So, for instance, okay, let's just use arbitration as a situation. Okay, I have clients that's like, okay, let's arbitrate. I'm ready to arbitrate this case. I can't arbitrate a case that I don't even know how it ends because I don't know if I'll be able to close their case out.
Here's how you make it easy for you. When you say it ends for who? All right.
It's for them getting their remedy because here's the thing. Even as a trustee, it's only so much that I can do as a trustee or as a fiduciary.
Right.
But if it's for a specific end result, I don't know how to provide that, so I'm not going to go into contract with someone on wishing a prayer. I need to have, I'm not a faith-based person. I'm not a, believer. I need to know.
Right. So what
So
is the
what their remedy is? I'm not going to go into contract with them because that's a lie.
Right. What are they trying to do? Because most folks that are in a position like, if they're facing anything criminal, or if they're facing anything tax-wise, both deal with accounting. So is it a client that's got all their books in order, they just need guidance, or they don't have nothing from nothing? They're in trouble, they ain't been paying these folks, or they've been running from the law, they done ran off the road, they done caused some sort of damage. Like, we're going to call it what it is. Problem clients that don't have knowledge, if they understand where they are, they will do certain things. So let's kind of put it in a room. We're going to say you got 100 clients potentially you can talk to. Out of those 100 clients, 20 of them have enough things going on which will solve your problem. All right. Now, without you selling your soul to Satan, shouldn't be hard for you to do what you came to do. Anything that goes beyond that, everybody got to be accountable for their own results. Like I give you an example. I take on a group of 30 people, and some people in the group will have better results than others. And then everybody start weighing in. Well, mine didn't work the way yours will, and this, that, and the other. So you have to give them the sniff test. Like, okay, well, what was these other people doing that you didn't do? And I can go straight to the bitch and say, well, I can tell you how many times they logged in, how many times they went to broadcast, how many assignments they turned in, how many certifications they did. So the ones that usually interacted the most got the most out of it. The ones that kind of came in because somebody told them something, thinking they were going to get something without making themselves a part of it, that's what it was. And if I ask you right now what Cecil stands for, you can't tell me. So if you can't tell me what Cecil stands for, this ain't for you. This really wasn't for you. Pay them people. If you gotta go to jail, go to jail. If this is for those that are willing to roll up their sleeves and get engaged. So when it comes to the clientele base, you have to understand that a lot of individuals, you take on the responsibility of fiduciary to see it through in that aspect. But you got to make sure that the client understands they are part in the remedy. You're not the remedy. They're the remedy. You're just a conduit. You're just a connector to the information. And you're a willing participant to help them because you believe in the remedy that they're seeking. Now, in the same breath, and I have to do this too. I have to look at the account and be like, good and well, this person could have paid this thing 3 months ago. Why the hell they did? Well, if they had the means and didn't, what is that saying? Now I understand a blue-collar worker losing his or her job. I get that. That's why I don't get into. That's why it's only certain aspects of accounting I want to see, because I know me. I'm going to ask some questions that's going to have everybody mad. I'm not going to tell you how to spin. I'm going to tell you what Cecil said and what it doesn't say. You want to do all this stuff, leverage and hedge. That's what the elite do. They leverage. They're up to debt. They're not running from debtors. They don't run from debt. They create debt. They're in millions of dollars of debt, but they can pick up the phone and get, millions of dollars more debt. It's good debt and it's bad debt. Which it's about getting in the right part of that with your clients. At the end of the day, then it'll be more fruitful for you because it's about increasing your revenue potential. There shouldn't be at any point in time of the day that you talk to any one of your clients that are in trouble with the IRS and you don't make a minimum of $250,000 to $300,000. I'll be highly disappointed if you were not making that type of compensation. I said another way, you're worth your weight in gold, so at least 4 or 5 ounces of gold all day. All day.
Well, I guess that's the problem.
Right.
I can get all day. This just I can get gold all day, every day. if I don't know how to convert it and use it in commerce, then what's the use?
You just got the remedy right there. Charge that way, but you remember you got little things around you that require you haven't required contract your way into the private yet. So use that as the standard. Like, look, okay, I need 3 ounces of gold for this. All right, guess what? I'm gonna get my own gold. So I need to do this contract in a way where I'm noting immediately this is what I'm doing, but I'm gonna use it to do X, Y, and Z. Why? Because I gotta work my way into contract with all these foods that I'm still one foot in the public, one foot in the private. You know, I gotta do that. I gotta be the change I want to see. You gotta get your entire circle where if you gotta use fiat, use a minimum. And if you're leveraging everything, you're using that leverage. And everybody understands that because they all have something to gain from assisting you in that process. I give you a true story. Little birdie told me someone was contracting with this entity that was in the public and they kind of wanted fiat. Document was sent to them that saying, well, you know that all the fiat that I've given you, I'm required to report that on this form. That spooked the potential landlord. So it was like, well, what do I got to do? So I know, in how that remedy was issued, I warned the client they may try to retaliate by waiting for you to make one mistake. You late one time mistake, and they want to use that as an excuse to get you, this, that, and the other. So how do you use this to your advantage? So now look, what you asked them for wasn't something that was illegal. It was just something that, creditors know and debtors, don't know. And because of that, now they see the liability. Now, that liability is going to affect, your relationship. So the path of least resistance is you bring out the resolution or remedy that works for both. Long and short of it, the little birdie decided that, okay, well, we're going to totally get out of this whole lease thing, man, and we're going to deal with lawful legal money. And instead of you getting a payment every 30 days, you're going to get a payment every 60 days. Because it's going to take 60 days for me to get you this phone through the fiat that you're looking for because of the process. Now, we can go down the road. Like, I can give you all your payments all right now. You ain't going to be able to use them until 30, 45 days at a time. In a certain capacity, doing X, Y, and Z. But they don't want that same information I said you got to have. I'm leaving some stuff out, of course. But I'm saying this, the little birdie informed me that after about 90 days of constant due diligence, this particular landlord now didn't want to take lawful legal money, but they're sure glad they did. Because now, because this is what happens with that conversation. The landlord that was simply trying to get fiat out of a potential debtor realized he was dealing with a fellow creditor, and now they're sharing resources. Resources that they both benefit from. See, a lot of your potential adversaries are really allies in disguise. They got issues too. They're fighting the same beast that everybody else is fighting. They're just in a different aspect of it. Like, if you've been paying rent, I'm gonna post the return, not the return, but the form. I think it's an 843 form. If you've been paying rent and never put it on an 843, then that's a potential to kind of get those individuals to work with you. One of the remedies was you can get all the money back you gave them because they didn't give you an 843. But I say, well, if you learn that, use that as leverage to get a credit. If I got a file to get this back, I can put a lien and levy on this particular company and this, that, no, we don't want to do that. Let's treat it as a credit. Because I know you need fiat, I'm going to work with that, but this is my system. Did I say it out loud? Hello, is anybody there? Can anybody hear me? Hello?
I'm here.
Okay. Did you hear
I
what
heard you loud and clear.
Did you hear me what I just said? Okay.
You said it's your system, so you can pay with oh gosh, you just didn't mind. But you said the last thing you said was it's your system.
Right. It's your
And you
system.
can basically do
Right.
it, use the form how you need to use it.
Right.
So if you use the 843 to get credit with the return, so basically what you're saying is you're gonna take the return, show that you're getting credit back for paying rent.
You can actually, if you had a landlord that could not produce information that he or she is supposed to produce because they're taking fiat and they haven't reported it promptly, then you can use it as a leveraging tool to get a credit and then work with them on getting the fiat that they want. But ultimately, you're going to put them on the same what? Knowledge. Like, look, dude, you're going to be offset discharging this debt that you running from. There's good debt and there's bad debt. I'm going to show you the beauty of this information. Pick a part of it that you know and you're comfortable with. You're going to learn everything. If you're not going to know everything, stop thinking I'm going to have to learn all this before, pick a part that is a part of this that really resonates with you because, and you know it because you find yourself in that knowledge without you giving it a conscious thought. Like, you'll hear things and you'll receive it a certain type of way. So the information, the part of this information that resonates with you the most, that is the part that you want to harness and build on. And develop your own processes. That is your niche. That's your key to prosperity right there. And then because it's a part of you, now pass it to the next person in a form that they can utilize. See that landlord who's struggling to pay his or her bill don't know about current expected credit losses. You don't know about 8,300 forms. And they damn sure been doing more than $10,000 transactions in 30 days. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But the little birdie told me after 90 days it started to change. So they went from being very combative to, they just, it kind of works like this. They send you a reminder every 90 days in the PayPal of, hey, you got any extra fiat, you can shoot this way, I'm still working on that, and you do, and it is what it is. But that old lease, oh my God, you got to get my fiat by the first, all that went away. The contract I used to do. That's what the little birdie told me. That's what the little birdie told me. Is that starting to make a little more sense to you?
Yeah, it makes more sense. I just got to figure out what my niche is.
Right.
In regards to that, and then I just really need to work on. This is going to lead to another question as it stands, but I just need to really work on what my niche is in order to make that happen. I just haven't stepped into that realm yet or found that space yet.
Right.
But in the interim, last week you were saying something about, the process to pull the awards out of the CRIS system.
Right.
And you said that, you were like, I can't give you that information because it's proprietary information.
Right.
So I'm kind of confused on.
There is a way. Right. There's a way. Right. There's a way to do it. So I'm gonna give you the three things you need. You need EDI, you need Bloomberg, and LexisNexis. Those three things will allow you to do all stuff you're trying to do.
Okay, wait a minute. Say that one more time. You started getting low again.
You're gonna need three components to do what you're talking about doing. You're gonna need EDI, Bloomberg, and you're gonna need LexisNexis. You got all three of those, you can do exactly what we talked about. There's a process.
You said EDI is an Edward Dolly Igloo?
Right.
And that's the pool that funds the award out of the CRIS, or is that to use the transmittal bond on what we were just talking about? I'm confused on what
I'm gonna give you the order, but I can't tell you. I'm gonna give you the ingredients. I can't tell you the measurements. All right.
you're going to need Bloomberg. That's the first ingredient. You're going to need LexisNexis. That's the second ingredient. And then the last ingredient you're going to need EDI. Banking deals with Bloomberg. Credit deals with LexisNexis. And commerce deals with EDI. Off the air in a private session, we'll go over how to mix it and make a cake. But that's what we do.
Okay. Okay, I'll work on those things.
All right. Actually, those resources are available to all notaries. You just got to know where to use them and when to use them. For example, I'll give you Bloomberg. Every time that a court is holding a session in court, that judge is using his laptop and he's entering in that charge and offense into a Bloomberg court. That's why it's called a court register investment system. So if it's being done in court with a case number, you have access to a Bloomberg channel. Also, when you're dealing with the court, you also have access to LexisNexis. Why? Because they're dealing with lawyers and so forth. They usually have LexisNexis accounts. They're dealing with Canadian Westlaw. EDI, I'm going to leave that to your imagination. Any other questions?
Nope, I think I'm clear.
All right.
I'm going to let somebody else have their turn.
All right. Do we got anyone else that is in the space? I got everybody's line unmuted, so you can ask your questions now if you got any, if you're on the call-in line. And for those of you that may want to call in while we're on, call-in number is going to be 701-802-5141. Passcode is going to be 801-7884 and pound. Again, that number is 701-802-5141. Passcode 801-884 and a pound. Call in now. This is WTBTA Radio with your host, Douglas. We're in the middle of Civics and Trustee training, so we're checking to see if we got anyone else with any other questions, comments, or concerns, or anything you heard up until this point.
But now I have a question that is not that you haven't talked about.
Okay, go ahead.
And the turnkey, the policy for the insurance policy for my mom is an elderly home and we want to bring her home.
Yes,
so
yes.
I'm trying to figure out the turnkey insurance that you were saying. Because I have an agent that I've been working with.
Right.
But she's giving me some different information. She's saying that she had to work for the business and I would be insuring something that she's doing. So, can you kind of, I guess, talk about that or either play
Okay. What I'll do to keep it relevant and keep everybody legal, we're going to talk about totally, and both. Trust-owned policies, trust-owned life insurance policies, corporate-owned life insurance, and bank-owned life insurance. That's how we'll do this. So in that regard, hope everybody can hear me. So I'm going to put everybody on mute just for a second so you can hear me and I can give you some information. Hold on for a second.
All participants are muted.
All right, we're going to give everybody a chance. Hope you can hear me. I hope it's coming in loud and clear. So here's what you can actually utilize. And the bank-owned policies, let's talk about it from this perspective. One would have to have some sort of policy that can be conveyed over to a trust. So there needs to be a contract or an agreement from the trustee of the, let's go here. We're going to use the quit claim because that makes it really easy for folks to grab. This is how you quit claim a property. You're going to have something like a document that allows the owner of the policy to quit claim it to the trustee of a trust, if you will. The preferred method, in my professional opinion, we're going to talk about trust in this capacity of revocable and irrevocable, being that you're supposed to divest yourself of all interest. So when you divest yourself of this policy, you probably want to utilize irrevocable trust. So the agreement needs to be with an irrevocable trust, or a trustee that has access to an irrevocable trust, or the agreement itself being a conduit to create irrevocable trust. So the owner of the policy must have some sort of contract or agreement that is being construed as a irrevocable trust, in my opinion. All right. Now, at that moment, that life insurance policy now becomes a total. A total. This is the acronym for trust-owned life insurance policy. Now, inside of the trust-owned life insurance policy, it's all about how do you utilize that policy in a bankable position. Well, most policies have the ability, once they have been given a certain status, and one of the duties of a notary I read was the ability to administer oaths and affirmations and give authentication, authenticity and validity of the document. So I'm pretty sure a competent notary could construct a mechanism that will convey the commercial energy of a policy that was once an individual life policy to a trust-owned policy with the ability to be bankable. So you got to research the variables of what bankable means. So to give you your turnkey, you need agreements that give you that. So you're looking for reference information on what makes a policy bankable in order for you to give that proper verbiage to the notary. Now again, the notary isn't supposed to be creating documents, but the notary can authenticate documents. So I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down on that. And then once it's moved into that trust-owned policy or the total position, it can easily be converted further, quit claimed again, if you will, to a bank-owned policy or a corporate-owned policy. Because when you understand what a banker is, then you'll understand how to really do the conversion. Now, I'm going to kind of back into some definitions of a banker because it just made it very easy for new listeners. Let's talk about banking. What is a banker? You're banking. Matter of fact, I think I got something that deals with banking in our document that's called Banking in a Box. Yeah, let me see if I can find that. Yeah, matter of fact, in the Banking in the Box presentation, there was, matter of fact, let me cheat a little bit. And by the way, we have actually put our entire library of trust and CECL materials in ebooks for those that are interested. I have already published more or less series. Also, I've been working on that, so that's those things off the shelf. Give them a price tag and all that kind of stuff. So those that want that information and be inquired about it without a link from the get those materials. A lot of the proprietary information you're asking for. Look. Bear with me, trying to bring up this. Then I can give you the totally Boldly told the story. Private banking and trust between mathematics. Here we go. Let's get into banking. Let's talk about banking. What is banking? And this is just a reminder to help you out with the conversion policy. Get into it. Maybe, where did I see that? I thought I had. I know what I had. Oh, it's not in there. I see. Bear with me. Bear with me. Trying to find the definition of banking without going through all of my other documents. Because it takes a while to find this stuff. I can go off the top of my head, but I haven't found it. Keep the dates, and I can do what I didn't. That is, let's go into bank portraits. Definition of bank. Bear with me. That's what happens when you read all these documents. You forget. They say out of sight, out of mind. Not really out of sight, out of mind, but more or less stereo it longer. Alright, I'm gonna go through. Okay, let's talk about banking. Alright, here we go. Thank you. Because when you're dealing with banking, you're also doing noting and mailing. So I'm just going to give you some things to just remember when you're doing this conversion with the policies. Okay. You do know that when you're dealing with banking is the business of receiving money on deposit and loaning money, discounting notes, issuing notes for circulation, collecting money on notes deposited, negotiating deals, etc. Well, the definition of a bank is an institution usually incorporated with the power to issue its promissory notes intended to circulate as money, which are known as bank notes, or to receive the money of others on general deposit to form a joint fund, and that shall be used by the institution for the institution's own benefit.
See, the term bank is usually restricted in its applications to an incorporated body, while a private individual making it his or her business to conduct banking operations is generally denominated as a banker. But what is a banker? Well, a banker is a private person who keeps a bank, one who is engaged in the business of banking, one who carries on the business of banking by receiving money on deposit with or without interest, by buying or selling bills of exchanges, promissory note, gold or silver coin, bullion, uncurrent money bonds. Let's stop. Uncurrent money. Money that's not in circulation, like a lot of you guys have these uncirculate notes, like you got the silver bonds, those are what we call uncurrent money. Bonds of stocks, other securities, by loaning money without being incorporated. So if you got a civil law notary, you convert that policy over from an individual to a trust-owned policy, then you're in the business of banking. You're operating as a bank, as a banker, a private banker, and you consider what we call a non-banking bank, an NBB, a non-banking bank. And as an NBB, you get to do all the things every other bank does without being regulated. So your ability to monetize that policy becomes very easy. And just to kind of go back to a previous conversation we had, the same little birdie said, as long as you got Bloomberg, LexisNexis, and EI, this process is pretty easy. So I kind of trying to give you the bird's eye view. I'm going to open back up the line because you may have some additional questions or the explanation of what I just gave you. Bear with me while I open up the line.
All participants are unmuted.
All right, I just opened up the line. I hope you could hear what I was explaining.
Okay, so I understood what you said. So I have the EDI and LexisNexis, but I don't have the Bloomberg. But are you going to offer training on Bloomberg?
Yes. Especially if you're in my accelerated class, those in the accelerated class are going to be within the first wave to start utilizing, because we're already at that process. So if you have access to those other things, then that will definitely be in the cards.
I can hear you.
I said that definitely will be in the cards, especially for those of you that are in our accelerated class.
Thank you.
All righty. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from anyone that's in the call portion of this particular class? Okay. If we don't have any more comments, questions, concerns, keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something.
All participants are muted.
So when these chickens come home to roost, man, I'm mobile like Boost while they failing. So I'ma put them down under like these dudes was Australian. Rappers couldn't see me in the 80s or the 90s. 30 years later, they wanna act like they find me. Now they wanna find me in the new millennium, but I'm a cannibal.
Classes for all interested parties, Monday through Friday. For more details, please feel free to reach out to us at 904-490-0297. Again, that number is 904-490-0297. We can be reached from the times of 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday. You can also reach us 12 to 4 on Saturdays. If you can't reach us there on the line, please feel free to drop us an email at B as in boy, I as in Isaac, D as in David, I as in indigo, I as in indigo, L as in Larry, B as in boy, E as in Edward, Y as in yarn at gmail.com. Again, that email is BIDZIILBEY@gmail.com. And remember, if you're interested in getting your affairs in order, you need to start by getting your mind right. Peace and love.
need to understand the real politics, the shadow government. Are we clear? Now, we went over this a couple of times, and since last time, I've been in a couple other parts of the country, and we talked to people, many who are scholars, and they still they're not solid in this history background. You understand? Which makes them ineffective. Because this is where your problems are rooted. This is where your economic problems are rooted. And not knowing it puts you at a supreme disadvantage. Are we clear? All right. I'll make that very clear. So, with the fall of the emirate, that's the Red House, Alhambra, that's where Michelle went. Remember when Obama went to Egypt? And keep these things in mind, because we're not going to write all these things down. You're going to write them down. When Obama went to Egypt, and he exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law, he's sending you to this history. All right? Without going into heavy detail. Then he goes to Article 11 of the Treaty of Tripoli, and he mentions 1790. And then he mentions the relationship between the United States and Morocco. He's pointing you to this history. But it's incumbent upon you to fill in the slots, to fill in the holes. Even like say, as we're here, right? We're here a couple of hours. And there's no way that we're going to give you or undo what Rome has had years to do. That's why I'm giving you, key points, what you call landmark points. Depending on you to expand your thinking and to do some research. I know you had Black's Law Dictionary, because that's what's going to happen. Then you also want to have a dictionary etymology on the English language. You want to have the older history books. You go to flea markets and stuff, don't hesitate to get those older books. That's where the knowledge is, I'm clear. The older encyclopedias that everybody wants to throw away thinking that they're updated. Do you understand what I'm saying? Those are the valuable books. All right? All of the later books are heavily edited, but we're clear. Because you have what is called a stage.
That's getting good. What's getting grim? There's something about trying to let me sin. I won't let you in. Into my sight, television glass, guided by the light. It shines bright like a sun's beam. Open up my heart, wait for this dream. Still view, so it's been there. Oh, it's too cold, we didn't care. Once I get loose, you get in my books. In the world of pain, I ain't got no course. More than physical, the sickness is spiritual. Bow to the east, ask God for and very cold. So many rituals on this page on TV. No wonder feels like the darkness getting near me, but I don't fear the state this clearly. Open my heart and I'm on my journey. Lord save me, in pain daily. Dark and the light and the view so hazy. It's driving me crazy, sick of being lazy. For all I had to do was find a job that pays me. I see a slavery song filled with the gravy. I give thanks and I pray. It's the one that made me. I've been feeling it lately, got me feeling great. So I stick on this path, boy, ever it takes me. I'm on this path and I feel alone. Know that we are dead, we'll be on the throne. Transport and force, leave the skin and bone. Guided to the light, we're on the chosen road. I'm in the zone, I'm maybe getting deep. Open up my eyes, awake from the sleep. Recharge my soul, now I'm no longer weak. There's a pride in my tone, you can hear it as I speak. It's like beat, let me guide it, turn me guided. Can't put me, no I can't be blinded. Always alert, I ain't got no eyelid. I'm the eye in the sky, like the eye inside of us. Got the golden touch, call me King Midas. Can't hold me down cause I'm a born survivor. Venomous spit, like cobra saliva. Lyrics built to like the ash where the tramps spin inside the fire. Fire with fire, can't preach to the choir. Before all of this I was about to retire. I'm a passionless eye, I stay clear from the fire. Can't wait for the fall of the empire, so I reach with my words like a freak on the curb. I get deep on the herb, the lights blind and disturb. Pray that I'm heard and beatbox like a nerd. I got this knowledge in my head like I died in return.
Because every faith system comes out of Africa anyway. So you must respect the Bible, you must respect the Quran, you must respect the Kabbalah, whatever it is, comes out of our mind. So I have nothing but love and respect for our brothers and sisters, no matter what religion, no matter what you are.
All right, family. I appreciate everybody definitely riding with Civics and Trustee training. We're not done yet. We're just getting ready to switch gears and turn all the way up. So if you're definitely locked in, stay locked in. Those of you that are definitely tuning in to our Spreaker feed, I would say this. Look, we got another broadcast that we actually do, which is on 365 Live. We actually, if you're on our Spreaker feed, do just that because we're going to turn all the way up on 365 Live. Remember, if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something. So everybody that's on Spreaker, I ask you just go to our 365 Live link. As it is already in progress, I'm going to continue to give you trustee training and some actual trustee news as it happens in real time. Remember, if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn.